In the name of the one who comes to set his people free from slavery and oppression, and in the name of the one who comes to set his people free from fear and death. Amen. Give us free. Give us free. Give us free. In the trial of Sinke and his brothers from South Africa or part of Africa, one of his friends has given him a Bible. And the only thing they can look at in the Bible are the pictures. But through looking at the pictures and watching this individual with a halo around his head, they begin to see and hear in the trial that it is about their freedom. Freedom. Tonight we gather to celebrate God's gift of freedom. God comes into the world to liberate people. Hearing pain and suffering, God sends people to lead people out of bondage and slavery into a new realm. We are God's free people tonight. We are God's liberating people tonight. Thank you, Adrian. So we should be paying attention to where there is pain and suffering, to where there is occupation and oppression, because that's one of the dynamic places where God is known to be acting. In the Hebrew press a week ago, they challenged the Jewish community to ask some new Passover questions. In the Passover meal, there are actually questions that get asked, and they sit around a table and they talk about these questions, very much centered on God's actions in the world. These were the questions that the press invited the people to think about. What are the lessons that we can learn from the experiences of other marginalized groups in history? And how can we apply those lessons to our own lives and communities? What does it mean to be free in this modern world? And how can we ensure that freedom is available to all? How can we use this Passover story and the Exodus as a model for creating a more just and equitable world for all? And the fourth question, what are the hopes and fears you have for the future of the Jewish people? And how can we work together to create a better tomorrow? I found those questions astounding. To imagine that Jewish people sitting in Jerusalem this past week would entertain discussion around those questions. With so much oppression, so much pain and suffering going on in the world around us, we want to avoid those questions often. Even when we come to church, we want to avoid those kinds of questions and find some other way to focus in church instead of addressing the very thing that God is addressing tonight in this meal that we are about to share and in the action of foot washing. For freedom is bound up with the question of power, the question of who has the power, and when they have it, what do they do with it? Moses and Jesus would argue that we have all been given the gift of power. The question is, what do we do with this gift that we have? Moses, as the children of Israel were about to cross the Jordan and enter into the land of Canaan, said, you have a choice to make. You can be destructive or you can be a blessing. You can use your power to destroy, to commit evil, to continue to oppress, or you can use the power that God is giving you today for blessing. How is God blessing us tonight? But unfortunately, in the world as it is, our culture teaches us about power differently. We are taught that the best place to be, the most successful place to be, is in a place where you have power over other people, that you control what's going on around you. Power can also be used among clients who come out of their need, and we treat them as clients to respond to their need. But there is a third use of power that Jesus is talking about tonight with his disciples around this table, knowing that he will not be with them shortly. Have you understood what I've done with you for the last year, 3 years? Power is to be with or alongside. It's a communal power that Jesus is talking about. Not power over one another, and we set up systems of authority and hierarchy and leadership to be able to do that, nor power to have people under you, which often get described in our culture through some of the social realities of class, of race, of sexuality, etc. But power to be alongside each other, this is much harder to practice. But it is the kind of power that disrupts the world as it is and ultimately transforms the world into another realm that might be possible. So as we gather tonight and we listen to the stories in the text and we share bread and wine together and we wash one another's feet, let us remember that Jesus is giving us a model tonight for community in which we are called to share power with one another. And through this power, the direction of our lives will be changed. We will act differently with one another. Not because the world calls us into success and we have to have power over, nor simply treating people out of a charitable way, but actually to develop a community. And inside a community, we are doing relational work. When we talk at Christmas time about what God is up to in the action, we talk about saying God is with us. Not over us, not some distant place, but God is actually physically with us. It's a deep prophetic tradition in our biblical narrative. And to be with us means that around the work that we are called to do, there is healing. There is restoration and restoring of relationships. There is change and transformation. There is possibility and imagination. Because God is at work creating a new reality. Think about that, Moses. All he wanted to do was to take his people out of Egypt for a weekend retreat. That's where it all began. I want them to know a different way that they can be rather than the way they are in Egypt. A simple weekend retreat. And every time Pharaoh thought, well, maybe I can let this happen, his heart hardens. How many hearts are we watching now being hardened in what we are experiencing? Now, I know we need to have structure, and we need to have leadership, and we need to have processes in the world. That's the way the world works. We know that. But unfortunately, the church has so much bought into that tonight at this table, Jesus is trying to help us subvert what the church often tries to replicate by saying it's not about structure, it's not about leadership, it's not even about processes. It's about servanthood and relationships. How do we consider ourselves today subversing these powers that try to contain us and control us and become a model that is very different from the model that we are being given on behalf of the disciples tonight? Jesus tonight in this service commands us to live in a new way. The commandment is to love one another, symbolically seen through the washing of our feet, where we are willing to kneel in front of each other and become servants to each other. That's the model that Jesus calls us to consider to become once we leave this place into the world. Tomorrow, Pilate is going to ask Jesus, what is truth? Pilate wants to understand the ideas that Jesus has, or the concepts that Jesus has, or wants to know the doctrines that Jesus is about. But Jesus will not answer the question, but I think in his heart, he is going to just say the Shema. It is to love the Lord my God with all my heart and with all my soul and with all my mind, and to love my neighbor as myself. The law and the rule of law is not working. We are many places experiencing that. But Jesus is inviting us into the rule of love. Perhaps Brian Stevenson says it most eloquently. The true measure of one's character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, the incarcerated, and the condemned. Give us free! Give us free! Give us free! Amen.